Playoffs? Playoffs? Yes, that's right. The fantasy football playoffs are right around the corner. You need to know what guys are healthy enough to win you this week and which guys you should fade. Welcome to the NFL Week 14 Injury Report. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus. What is up, folks? I am the DGen Doc here, and it is another week, which means it's another opportunity to talk injuries. That's right, injuries. Roster management is a huge part of fantasy football. Whether it's IDP, whether it's regular fantasy football, you got to know what guys to play, and injuries play a huge role in that. And that is where I step in. Welcome to the NFL Week 14 Injury Report, folks. Hey, if you're just joining us for the first time, cheers to you. Thank you for joining. If you've been rocking with us all season, I appreciate you coming back for another week. This is how it's going to break down here. A little bit of stroke structure, a little bit of expectation management at the top here. Yeah, it's an injury report, right? So pretty self-explanatory there, but you've probably seen a lot of these more offensive focused fantasy football wise. Just talking a couple of the bigger names and that being it. Not so much what we're going to get here because this is IDP plus, so it isn't actually a defensive focused injury report. Now, you likely play, if you play IDP, there's a good chance you also play normal offensive fantasy football, or maybe you just stumbled upon this video looking at some injuries for some offensive guys. Well, I do an offensive injury rundown at the end of the episode. So I will do about last 5 minutes or so, a quick and dirty rundown for that. But the majority of this episode is going to be defensive focused. So, yeah, I think without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into some of these defensive injuries. We're going to start with the Buffalo Bills there. Some I'm going to talk about an individual player, or some it's going to be more of like the team as a whole type deal because we got a bunch of guys dealing with it. We're going to start in Buffalo and do more of the team approach here. Starting off with, we're going to be talking defensive end Joey Bosa, defensive end AJ Epinesa, and linebacker Terrell Bernard. Joey Bosa, hamstring injury suffered last week against Pittsburgh late in the game. Called week to week. Week to week tells me a couple things. One, not going to be out there for this week. For the week that they kind of get that injury, week to week pretty much rules them out. So when we talk hamstring strain, what is the hamstring? It's the muscles, really three muscles put together, but it's the muscle group and the back of your thigh there. Most of us know where the hamstrings are. Now, when we talk about a hamstring strain, really that's just referring to damage to the muscle. And when we speak muscle strains, there's a different grading scale, 1, 2, and 3. And that all just refers to how much damage is done to the muscle. Grade 3 is a full tear. Grade 1 is small, minor micro tearing. And grade 2 is kind of that moderate, like more muscle fibers are torn, but, the whole muscle tendon is not torn off the bone type deal. So grade 3 surgery is required, and right away because it's usually season ending. Grade 1 is more of that day to day, and grade 2 is what they say that week to week. Now that's a decent bit of spectrum. Typically, when we talk hamstring strains, it's about 3 to 6 weeks recovery timeline. Now, hamstrings are tricky because you do not want to come back too soon because they have high re-injury rates, especially the first 2 weeks after returning to play. They're also one of those where you feel better mentally before the muscle's actually healed, so that contributes to the high re-injury rates. So it's a tricky one. So expect Bosa going to be out definitely this week. I'm expecting him out at least 2 to 3 weeks there. All right, linebacker Terrell Bernard with the elbow injury. He has been out. He was in a sling a couple weeks ago, I think against Houston when Buffalo lost that game. He didn't practice at all last week, didn't play against Pittsburgh, not practiced these first 2 days of the week. So I'd say he's doubtful at this point. Now, AJ Epinesa, he's an interesting one because he got added to the injury report today. He was added as it did not practice due to a foot injury. Now, that raises the red flags a little bit because typically that means they got hurt in practice, or maybe something they're like getting kind of like after effects from the game. But typically it's let's be careful here. That's usually not a good sign. So I would say Bosa and Bernard are, very likely going to be out. Epinesa is one we want to watch, but they're all trending in the wrong direction. All right, let's move along to the Chicago Bears, the first place Chicago Bears, not only in the NFC North, but in the NFC with their win over Philly on Black Friday. They're getting a little bit healthier. They've been decimated at the linebacking core. Tremaine Edmonds, TJ Edwards, Noah Sewell, all had been out for multiple weeks. Well, Edmonds is on the IR, so he's still going to be out for a couple weeks. But TJ Edwards and Noah Sewell returned to practice this week. Both of them back-to-back practices. Also, Jalen Johnson, who's been working his way back from the IR with a groin injury. All three of those guys were practicing for the 2 days in a row. Sewell's been having a full practice, so he's definitely going to be good to go. I think Johnson as well. I'd say TJ Edwards come back from that hamstring, and they're calling it a hamstring in the hand, but he re-injured the hamstring, dealt with an injury early on, came back and re-injured it. There's that kind of high re-injury rates I was speaking to. He might need a ramp-up week as in Edwards. He's the one I'm a little bit more questionable about. But Sewell and Johnson look like they're definitely going to be out there. And, going against the Packers team that Josh Jacobs, they want to establish the run, definitely that linebacking core is going to get some work. So Sewell, I think he's someone you can get in your lineups there. And definitely TJ Edwards, one of their leaders at the linebackers, if he's able to play. Just not sure. He might need a ramp-up week because he's been out for several weeks at this point. Don't want to re-injure it yet again. Sticking with the Bears there, let's talk a little bit of one guy in Tyrique Stevenson. Not so great news here. Back-to-back no practices. He got knocked out of the game, last week or 2 weeks ago. He didn't play last week, so he hasn't practiced in over, this has been a week and a half now. Typically for those guys, you want more than just one limited practice. You want at least a limited, if not a full. So I call Tyrique Stevenson at this point doubtful. I would have a pivot plan ready to go for him. All right, moving on to the team that they are going to be playing this week in Lambeau Field. Green Bay Packers, and got some mixed bag here. Let's start with the bad news. Defensive end Lucas Van Ness and defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt, both back-to-back no practices and both expected out. Now, Lucas Van Ness has been out multiple weeks already with this foot injury. So, again, he's the similar situation of multi-week absent. Would expect him to just be able. He would need more than just one practice to be able to go. And then Devontae Wyatt, he's someone who got late. He got hurt late in the game last week against the Lions. This is thought to be a pretty serious injury. I'm surprised he hasn't been put on the IR yet. Maybe they obviously think he has a chance to be able to come back. We'll see. Sometimes these guys, teams just wait, roster management wise, and then they put somebody on the IR. But definitely, I would expect both those guys to not be out there this week. And Vanessa's already been out multiple weeks, and Wyatt's injury is trending that direction as well. Now, going to the linebacker core here, we got some better news. Linebacker Edgerrin Cooper with the shoulder injury, and then linebacker Quay Walker, who's been out a couple weeks with the neck injury that was called a stinger. Thankfully not. A stinger is more of the nerve irritation, more of a 1 to 2 week thing than neck injuries, true kind of vertebrae instability, fracture, things like that. Those can be not only season altering, but career altering. But thankfully, Quay Walker is more the stinger variety. He had a full or both of these guys had a full practice today on Thursday. An absolute great sign that they'll be out there. So, I said Green Bay likes to establish a run. The Chicago Bears are the second best rushing team in the NFL. They ran for 200 plus against the Eagles. They want to establish the run. So those linebackers are going to get a ton of work. Love Quay Walker there. He's a tackling machine, and Cooper is following suit as well. Now, a guy who popped up on the injury report today with no practice, Javon Bullard with an ankle injury. He practiced yesterday, but added today as a DNP, did not practice. So, again, this is one of those where the Spidey senses kind of go off, a little bit of a red flag, yellow flag, whatever you want to call it. Not a great sign. Typically means he got hurt in practice. Is usually what happens. There's these sometimes like, hey, maybe I'm feeling a little bit more sore than I thought I was coming off the game, but this is one where we at least need more information, and it does not make me feel great that he's going to be out there if he's missing that Thursday practice, especially as a downgrade because he was out there on Wednesday yesterday. All right, moving to the former sack leader in the NFL, Trey Hendrickson, who has kind of had a very, very, very quiet year, especially for his standards. And a lot of it's been due to injuries. Obviously, had that contract dispute where he was holding out. Always kind of a bad sign when someone holds out, as far as like when you think about these players that have held out and dealt with injuries. Terry McLaurin, obviously Trey Hendrickson. Mike Parsons has been pretty decent, but he had that back injury. Like, it's always a concern. They could be working out or whatever, but you really only get in football shape by playing football and competing against other professional athletes. So you need to be out there. Trey Hendrickson had a hip injury, then came back and played, got it re-aggravated against the Jets, and he has not been back since in over a month. Zach Taylor said it wasn't going to be that big of a deal. Clearly, it's a huge deal. He's been out for several weeks. Don't know why they didn't just put him on IR, but who knows? They just pretty much keep calling him doubtful, and he's not practicing. Has not practiced in almost a month there. So I do not expect him out there for this week, unfortunately. Another guy, defensive lineman, this time with the Denver Broncos, but kind of concerning, getting to the spidey senses again. Defensive tackle Zach Allen, he was practicing yesterday in full, and he got added as a DMP today with a calf injury. Typically, again, this is a during practice or injury or something of the sort like that. We need more information because, again, there is a chance that it was not something so sinister, but a downgrade of status in the middle of the week, a couple days before the game, is typically never a good sign. So, we want to confirm this here, but definitely start making a pivot for the defensive tackle, Zach Allen. Going up against a Raiders offensive line that is atrocious. Anyone you have on the Denver Broncos defensive line, I would play because of how bad they are, but especially in the interior where Zach Allen likes to work. So this would be very unfortunate if he's not able to go and give you a boost in your lineup there. All right, moving over to the Houston Texans, who are on a nice little winning game themselves. Defensive end Will Anderson, defensive end Denico Autry, and linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair were not practicing on Wednesday, but they were all upgraded to be practicing today on Thursday. If you're practicing Thursday, it's typically a really good sign that you're going to be able to play on Sunday. So, Will Anderson, Azeez Al-Shaair, and Denico Autry, all key pieces to the number one defense in the NFL, at least from a yardage standpoint. And, the Kansas City Chiefs, speaking more to Will Anderson and Denico Autry, left tackle Josh Simmons is on the IR with the wrist dislocation and fracture. His season's likely done, but he's definitely not out there this week. And then Javon Taylor and Trey Smith both not practicing at this point as of Thursday. So clear question marks on the Chiefs' offensive line. So the Houston Texans may be able to feast a little bit, even though the game is in Kansas City. Some on the flip side for Houston, you've got cornerback Kamari Lassiter and safety Jayden Reed, both not practicing in back-to-back days. Jayden Reed, the rookie there, young safety, he was in a sling and it looked like his season might be over. But then D'Amico Ryan said the injury is not season-ending. But obviously, how quickly can he return? The got downgrade to no practice is not a great sign. And Kamari Lassiter has not practiced 2 days in a row. So he's someone that is also trending downwards. That's a starting cornerback opposite Stingley, trending downward for Kansas City, who, these Texans may be a little bit thin in the secondary on the back end with both those guys potentially being out. Now let's talk about one of the biggest free agent splash news. Colts cornerback Sauce Gardner. He dealt with an injury, and there was a huge game last week against the Houston Texans at home. The Colts were unable to get it done, and part of that was, Sauce Gardner went out very early, and that pass defense went back to being very suspect. He did the classic look back at his leg where people fear for an Achilles tear, but it was higher up on the leg, and it was, what's attached to the Achilles, and that is your calf. So it looks like he's dealing with a calf strain. They said it's week to week, but not bad enough to put him on IR. So that tells me, likely expect him out 2 to 3 weeks, based on that calf strain there. Likely going to be more of a grade 2 than grade 1, which is more of a 1 to 2 week type deal. But Sauce Gardner should return by the end of the NFL season. I I don't know if he'll be back for the playoffs or if he's doing his first game kind of championship week, or it's just a little bit of a risk reward there. But do not expect him out there for today, or excuse me, Sunday, and then probably next week at minimum as well. That's that calf injury that we speak about where, you know, calf really refers to two muscles: your gastroc, which is your more superior, bigger muscle on the outside, and your soleus underneath. So mostly they talking about the gastroc here, and the grading is the same as when we were talking about hamstrings. I would say this is closer to a grade 2. We would know if it was a grade 3 full tear, and grade 1, he would probably be more of that day to day than week to week. So that's what to expect for Sauce Gardner there. All right, let's talk about a guy who is hopefully making their return to the field after a couple weeks off there, and that's star defensive end Travon Walker for the Jacksonville Jaguars. First practice in several weeks with this knee injury. This is a little bit one where we don't know exactly what's going on with the knee. The NFL teams only have to say body part. Did they practice at all? One snap or all but one snap, so it would be limited, or did they not practice in any capacity? And then that would be the DMP. So they only really need to tell us body part and kind of how much they practice. So we're not getting a ton here on Travon Walker about what's going on. But the fact that he's back practicing means he has a chance for this week. He's been off a couple weeks. So coaches have different philosophies about do they need to ramp up, or if they're good to go, they're good to go. So one to watch there for Travon Walker. They're going up against the Colts, who do have a good offensive line. So, it might be a tough matchup first week back from the injury. Now, some interesting news that we hopefully will get some more clarity on tomorrow. That is in Las Vegas. You have Raiders defensive end Maxx Crosby and linebacker Jamal Adams. Both after practicing yesterday were downgraded to a no practice today. So this is going to be one you definitely want to pay attention to. Obviously, Maxx Crosby is one of those studs that you kind of set and forget. But he had a limited practice yesterday and then did not practice today with the knee injury, another vague kind of knee injury. He always typically plays through everything, but that may not mean, he might do that and still not be 100%. Going up against a really solid Broncos offensive line, uh, that's going to be a little bit harder to trust unless it was some type of scheduled rest or maintenance day for Crosby, which is not what's being reported. Then bit of a concern to be downgraded to not playing, 2-3 days before you're supposed to be out there. So one to watch there for Maxx Crosby. Moving on to New Orleans to talk about some Saints here. Talking specifically the safety position in the back end. Justin Reed dealing with a knee injury, and then rookie safety Jonas Sanker. He added to the injury report today with a head injury. So I'm assuming, is he going to get checked for a concussion? Where are we at there? But not a great sign that he got downgraded today to not practicing. Justin Reed has already not been practicing, so kind of expected him to not be there. But with Sanker, he's someone that helps replace Reed at the safety position. They'd be down pretty thin there. So we'll have to see. But the fact that he got added to the injury report today again is not a great sign with a head injury. All right, let's go to New York and talk about some Jets there in some cold weather. And that is the defensive ends, Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald, both dealing with ankle injuries. Both were able to play last week. Typically if a guy's able to finish the game the week before, I don't stress out about Wednesday injury reports too much. Thursdays tell us a little bit more of the story. Both these guys didn't practice Wednesday, but both are back practicing today. Thursday for December 4th there. So good signs for the Jets pass rushers that they should be available this week. Now, someone who may not be available for the Washington Commanders, one of the OGs there, as far as just being old because he's not really, known to be there. But Bobby Wagner dealing with a knee injury, back-to-back no practices. The Commanders defense has been a bit of a joke, if we're being honest. It's really struggled. Now going up against essentially rookie JJ McCarthy. This is I trust Brian Flores to kind of or not, excuse me, not Brian Flores, but um, Brian Flores was really messed with JJ McCarthy, but really all defenses are kind of giving him some issues there. But by Wagner, back to back no practice is not a great sign. Kind of one that he's a veteran. If he fully practices and out there, then this might be something worthwhile because McCarthy likes to throw to Hawkinson. There's going to be a lot of Jones and oh geez, the name is evading me. Jordan Mason. But just wanted to watch with Bobby Wagner because older guy, no back to back, no practices, not really trending in a great direction. Now here's the biggest one of the thumbnail guys, and obviously not just the injury, but just the impact that it will have. So the breaking news today, if you will, on the defensive injury side of the ball, Jalen Carter. He's going to be out for Monday Night Football for sure, but he underwent a procedure on both shoulders. Now, they were pretty vague on what procedure means. Typically, we assume surgery, but it sounds like he actually was getting some type of therapeutic intervention, some type of, likely PRP, platelet replacement there, something where they're trying to influence the joint but without having to fully open it up and have surgery because that would essentially end his season. He's clearly been dealing with some type of injury, whether it's a labrum injury, which helps protect our shoulder and our ball and socket. And if it gets damaged, it's very painful, very annoying. Or if it's instability, kind of dislocation, subluxation issue. So it sounds like he didn't have full on surgery, but he had some type of procedure, whether it was an injection or minor thing to try to essentially relieve the shoulder and basically have him be ready for the playoffs and not have to get surgery, which would end his season, excuse me. So yeah, Jalen Carter definitely out this week. Say he's probably going to be out a couple weeks, but no IR. So that means he is fully intending on being back by the end of the year. And then the playoffs, he's trying to get healthy for that. All right, sticking in Philly, we can talk the new addition in Jalen Phillips. He suffered a concussion last game, but it was thankfully on Friday, Black Friday. So they've had, at this point, it's been almost a week. They have extra rest. So he was a limited practice participant with a concussion. With the game not being all the way till Monday, there's a very, very, very good chance he's going to clear and be good to go for Jalen Phillips against two backup tackles because no Rashawn Slater or Joe Alt for the LA Chargers. Now, let's finish up with the Steel City of Pittsburgh here. Let's first talk the rookie, Derrick Harmon. He's already been ruled out by Mike Tomlin. Man, if only all coaches were just as transparent as Mike Tomlin was. Like, he lets you know who's playing, who's not playing right at the top of the week usually before an injury report even comes out or they even have practice. But yeah, Harmon's going to be out again for this defense. He's made a huge difference in the run game going up against Lamar and Derrick Henry. Not exactly where you want to be there, but outside linebacker TJ Watt and linebacker Patrick Queen both practiced today after not practicing yesterday. Watt being in a full practice, Queen getting in a limited practice. I think this is a good sign for both of these guys as far as being able to have a chance for Sunday, right? They're going to need them. This is a huge matchup against Baltimore. Historically, Pittsburgh has kind of handled Lamar fairly well. They've kind of put him in some trouble. TJ Watt and Patrick Queen have been big portions of that. Now, their being back would be huge, but again, Harmon being out really kind of lends to a pretty run-heavy script for Baltimore, which could be good for a guy like Patrick Queen, who's going to clean up a lot of those tackles there. So something to note. All right, if you just came here for the defensive portion of the show, you can either earmuffs the rest of the episode or just get on out of there. Hey, if you liked what you heard, would love a like and subscribe on your way out. For everybody else, it is offensive rundown time. That is right. It's going to be quick and dirty. It is not going to be as in-depth as the defensive side, but we're going to talk biggest injuries, top to bottom, and just hit the wave tops and tell you what you got to know. All right, first up, Lamar Jackson, quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens. From the practice on yesterday, which was kind of like he hadn't done that in a while, but then he of course comes out and doesn't practice today. Now, right now the expectation is he is going to play, but dealing with an ankle injury, it seems like literally something different every week. I would still expect him to play, but this is one you want to watch closely because there is a chance we could get Snoop Huntley in there. So we need more information on Lamar. Now, for Justin Herbert, we've got really good news. He was at practice today in their Thursday, essentially Wednesday practice because they play on Monday. He's kind of said he's going to be able to play through it the whole time. It's on his non-throwing hand, and yeah, he's got screws and some plates in there, but it sounds like there's pretty much preparing for Justin Herbert to be able to go in that one. Now, Jayden Daniels also looking to get back onto the field there, looking to make his debut. He was upgraded to a full participant after that nasty elbow injury. But he full participant today for Jayden Daniels. So that's a really good sign. He's going to be back this week, just in time for Minnesota fans. And then we've got T. Higgins, a guy who is working through the concussion protocol, but he did have a full practice today. To clear the concussion protocol, you need a limited practice, a full practice, and then if you have no symptoms after, you're good to go. So I fully expect him to be cleared and ready to play for Sunday. Heading over to Arizona, we've got a couple offensive guys who have had back-to-back no practices in Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey Benson. Benson dealing with a knee, and then Marvin Harrison dealing with a heel injury he picked up last week. Back-to-back no practices. Benson's trying to get activated off the IR. Probably not a great sign there. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., again, he got knocked out of the game last week, was unable to return, and now hasn't been able to practice going into, it'll be Friday of this week. So not great sign for either of those guys. Trucking along here, another not great signs for Drake London. When that injury first happened, when it was called a PCL strains suck. They take a long time to come back from, especially for a wide receiver. So they keep trying this day-to-day stuff, but he hasn't practiced in almost 3 weeks. With him not practicing a day, I would say it is very, very unlikely Drake London's going to be out there. Woody Marks, the Houston Texans running back, who stabilized some rooms from waivers there, upgraded to a full practice after a no practice situation yesterday. Again, Wednesday, you got to take those injury reports with a grain of salt, especially if the player finished the game the week before. Now going to Josh Downs in a very, very similar trajectory as far as didn't practice yesterday with hip injury, and then he got upgraded to a full practice, which is obviously a great sign if they're fully out there. Sometimes they just need a day or a little bit of rest, and they're good to go. Now sticking with or moving to New Orleans, talk about some Saints here. Running back Alvin Kamara and offensive tackle Tylis Fuaga, both back-to-back no practices, both key cogs of this offense. Obviously, Kamara do it all back, and then Fuaga has become a decent tackle. I mean, for a rookie, he's still got some things to learn, but this would be a big loss. And with both of these guys not practicing back-to-back, the expectation is they are not going to be out there. Now, a Saint that is going to be hopefully out there is Chris Olave, wide receiver, who is dealing with a back injury. He was upgraded to a limited participant today after not practicing on Wednesday. So that is typically a good sign that we could see Olave out there. All right, we're going to wrap it up with a couple Buccaneers. Good news first. Baker, Bucky, and Chris Godwin all fully practicing today on a Thursday. Baker dealing with that shoulder, Bucky dealing with his shoulder, and Chris Godwin dealing with that fibula from the offseason surgery there. But those guys, full practice, almost 100% going to go. Now, some other guys who are not quite as fortunate, wide receiver Mike Evans with the collarbone and wide receiver Jalen McMillan with a neck injury, they've returned to practice. Their practice window is open, but they've only got back-to-back limited practices. So would need to see kind of a full practice for these guys to be able to have a shot. The Bucs Todd Bowles this year has been very notorious for guys coming off IR getting a ramp up week, if not two. We saw it with Bucky Irving. It's kind of been a very frustrating thing, but especially playing the Saints, they are not in a huge rush to rush those guys back there. All right, folks, that is it for your NFL Week 14 injury report. New segment, new episode series this season. So give me feedback, completely open to it. Goal here is to maybe educate you a little bit and just let you know what guys that you want to avoid, which guys are okay. They've got a questionable tag, but they're actually good to go, or I expect them to be good to go there to get you a leg up on your opponents there and start making waiver claims or other arrangements if guys are not going to be in your lineup. All right, folks, from the DGen Doc here on IDP Plus, I am out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.